Child stars seem to have a bright future, isn't it? However, things sometimes just don't go as planned. As you're going to see in this next video, some child stars that were adored ended up being criminals. Some of them even ended up in jail for committing heinous crimes. Before we continue, make sure you click the bell icon so that you get notified when we post new content. Of course, subscribe to the channel so that you become part of the Brably family. Everybody that has seen the Harry Potter movies know who James Waylett is. While his part wasn't as demanding as some of the other individuals who starred in the films, dedicated fans of the Harry Potter series are very familiar with his work. Obviously, those fans were surprised when they found out that he had been arrested for participating in the riots in London that occurred a few years ago. These were extremely destructive riots that caused tens of thousands of dollars worth of damage. Since that time, his acting career has taken a major hit, and it remains to be seen whether or not he will be able to put the pieces back together at some point in the future. Bieber started out as a cute young kid that could sing and ultimately ended up doing a few movies. When he was younger, he always brought up how religious he was and how important it was to do good things and have good manners. This was the image that most people came to identify him with. As a direct result, a lot of people were initially surprised when he started getting into a lot of trouble. As Bieber grew older, he got in trouble for things like DUI and has since been in trouble for assaulting a photographer as well as traffic offenses. All in all, he has fallen into a pattern of doing something that he shouldn't be doing, even something illegal, and then coming back and apologizing for it once he gets caught. This has turned into something of a vicious cycle for Bieber, and no one really knows at this point in time if he'll be able to get things under control or if things will get even worse. This is another cute kid that has the talent of both singing and acting. As a result, Disney put him to work doing both. Many people fell in love with Aaron Carter and he became a heartthrob to his fans. This continued on through his early teen years. However, as he grew up into an adult, things started to take a bad turn. Eventually, Aaron was arrested for drugs and he still seems to be struggling with it. It wasn't all that long ago that he was in trouble yet again for the same thing. Only time will tell how things will ultimately play out for Aaron Carter. Dana Plato was an attractive young woman that played on the 1980s sitcom Different Strokes. Most people thought of her as a wholesome young woman, but the truth is she was struggling with drug addiction even while she was starring on the show. Eventually, her addiction led her to do things that she might not have otherwise chosen to do. Dana was arrested for attempted robbery when she walked into a convenience store with a gun and attempted to hold up the place. Most people will agree that she did this in an attempt to get money to buy more drugs. Unfortunately, Dana was never able to get her life together. In 1999, she died of a drug overdose before she was 35. When he was younger, Lilo Brancato Jr. was a popular star on The Sopranos. Most people thought he had an opportunity to do great things as an actor as his career progressed. Unfortunately, his career and his life ended up being derailed when he committed burglary and got arrested for it. Since then, his life has been a lot more about dealing with his legal troubles than anything else. Now, this is definitely one of the more complicated individuals that shows up in this video. Skylar was an individual that starred on the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. After the act, life seemed to go completely haywire for Skylar. Eventually, there was a murder conviction involving Dillion and the murder of 3 people. Even today, Dillion sits on death row. Problems persisted even in prison. While assigned male at birth, Dillion eventually attempted to alter herself with a razor blade. She then came out as transsexual. No one really knows if not attempting to deal with these issues and not being true to herself when she was younger had anything to do with the murders that eventually took place. However, it doesn't change the fact that she committed a very serious crime that cannot be undone. Manuel starred in the movie Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Believe it or not, a lot of people seem to like this movie, and Manuel became something of an overnight sensation. The success, however, didn't last long, as he was subsequently convicted of a murder. We don't have a lot of details about what took place. The only thing that we know is that he took the life of someone else, and for that, he remains in prison. Who wouldn't fall in love with the cute little girl that starred in It Is the Extraterrestrial? Drew had a presence about her at a young age that simply commanded the attention of the audience. In addition, she came from a family that had been in the show business for years. Unfortunately, that same family also had a decade-long history of substance abuse, including substances of all kinds. Drew didn't have a lot of direction growing up, so she ended up falling into the same pattern. The actress admits to smoking before she was 10 years old, and by the time she was 11, she was an alcoholic. At 13, Drew started doing cocaine and even attempted suicide a year later. Because of her addiction and her suicidal tendencies, she ended up in rehab twice before she was even 15 years. Fortunately, Drew ended up getting things under control and has gone on to have a successful career in Hollywood. Today, she will tell you that the most important thing that she has ever done in her life is to become a mom. While she is still active in Hollywood, she is much more concerned with taking care of her family and making sure that the addiction issues stops with her. Corey Haim was practically a household name in the 1980s. He was considered a heartthrob, and as such, everyone was clamoring to get him to star in their project. Unfortunately, he was also dealing with a serious drug addiction. Eventually, that addiction had a dramatic and adverse impact on his acting career. He basically disappeared from Hollywood and continued to get into legal trouble for drug possession. He wasn't even able to get a handle on his addiction, and in 2010, he died from an apparent drug overdose. Jodie was a cute little girl that starred on Full House. It's almost unthinkable that someone that seemed to be so full of innocence could fall into the same pattern of drug addiction as so many other individuals. But this is exactly what happened to her. By her own admission, she started experimenting with drugs because she couldn't think of anything better to do, which is a troubling enough statement in and of itself. Eventually, her drug addiction resulted in her marriage falling apart and her getting into some serious legal trouble. Today, Jodie stars in the reboot of the show entitled Fuller House with the same people she acted with as a child. Life is all about choices, and you have to play the hands that you are given the best way you can. However, the way that you play the hands that you are given will determine your future. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you click the like button, and also if you haven't done so, subscribe to the channel so that you get informed whenever we post new content.
Yeah!